In this video, we're going to put together the reversing lever, which changes the direction of the lead screw relative to the spindle. This is the reversing lever. You can put it in forward or reverse, and then there is a neutral setting in the middle. Twin gears on top, they engage the spindle. The reversing shaft is right in the middle, that doesn't move at all. The reversing gear and the stud gear. Here are all the parts to the reversing lever. The main casting is the bracket, and it contains 3 holes that intersect each other to allow for the flow of oil to each of the bearings. And the felt wicks are also in these holes. And the purpose of this is to allow the flow of oil to the reversing shaft and the 2 studs. Here is the reversing latch, the pin, the plunger, and the spring for the plunger. Here are the twin gears with the bushings already installed in the gear and the stud, which really is just a small, very short shaft. And there's a recess for the wicks that hold the oil. These gears are exactly the same. Both studs and the gears are identical. Here I am pressing in the bronze bushing inside the gear. The gear kind of acts like a die when you press these bushings in to make them nice and round when they fit in tight. This is the reversing gear shaft and the reversing gear that gets pressed on, and also the stud gear, also pressed on. This is a stepped square key that goes into the keyway, which is also stepped on the shaft. These are the plugs and the oiler. This is just a simple plug that goes in this hole. And there was a pin in this hole, but I had to drill it out to get it out, then I had to replace it then with a 1/4 by 20 screw. And then this is the oiler, where the oiler goes. Alright, first thing you have to do is install these felt wicks in the oil passages. And I do that by getting some wire and snaking them through the passage. The hook on each end, try to hook them together and then pull it through. And then wrap that wire around the felt wick and then pull it through as well. This actually was a lot harder than it looks. You get this done, you got the hardest thing done. Unwrap the wire, and then you can line the wick up wherever you want it. Cut it off, trim it off, and then do the same thing for the next cavity. Now these wicks have to touch each other, so they're going to wick the oil into the bearing. Wrap the wire around and then pull it through. So this wick intersects the first one you put in, and it also, the end of it will connect the wick on the reversing shaft. Now put a couple of small pieces in the holes that feed the twin gear studs, and they're going to touch the first wick you put in and then feed oil to the stud. Slip both these in, and then put the screw in the first hole. I put some tape around it to keep it from leaking. I had to drill a hole through the middle of this plug when I pulled it out. So then I just braze the hole over to repair it and then replace the plug. This is the wick for the reversing shaft. Just get that thing situated and put it in the recess that's been cut there. Put some oil in, give it a little head start, and then also put some oil on the shaft before you slide it in. This shaft doesn't have any bronze bushing, it's just steel on steel, but it looked like it worked pretty well. It wasn't worn at all. Trim off the wick and then press on the reversing gear. Now I just tapped it in and it went in fine, but be careful not to damage this stuff. Pressing would be better. Next goes on the stud gear. It's also a press fit, but this one slipped on pretty easily. Then comes the nut. You can tighten it up later when it's on the headstock. Very nice. These are the studs and the twin gears. Like I said earlier, the studs and the gears are exactly the same. There's a felt wick that goes on, and then you can slide the gear on the shaft. This should be a pretty tight fit. The wicks here will contact the wicks on the bracket. These studs are a press fit onto the bracket, and there are pins to keep it from spinning and a slot in the shaft to go into the pin. Just work this in. Press fit would work, or pressing would work better. I just tapped them in. You can also use the threaded stud on the other side to just pull it in with a nut. There goes the second one. And then put the nuts on and tighten them down. These are pretty stiff because of the new bushings, but the gears are in perfect alignment now. Now you can install the plunger with the plunger spring and the reversing latch and the pin that holds it all together. A couple of taps with a hammer to seat the pin. And then now the plunger goes in and out just fine. The last thing is to just put that oiler in. And here I forgot to put the tape on. I did it later. Now we're all done. The reversing lever goes into the left side of the headstock. And that's what we're seeing here. The big hole in the middle is where the bracket goes. These two holes are for the lock. And then these two pins are the upper limits for the forward and reverse. 3 holes, the middle one is neutral, and the other 2 are forward and reverse. Here is a slot in the bottom of the bracket where the lock engages it. And you can see it's shaped so that the bracket can pivot back and forth and still maintain this pressure against the headstock. Here we're putting in the reversing lever lock. 1 screw, let it tilt. This is a nice tight fit. It's probably only about 1/1000 or 2 difference. And then put the second screw in the lock and slide it up in place and tighten it down. Here I have the camera set up so it's right in line with where the shaft will be. And you can see how these twin gears both engage that shaft exactly the same spot. Nice and tight.